Hello, this is Professor Triplet, and we're going to continue with our reference creating videos. So I wanted to show something here. I did a set of pictures a while back of the same object, and I used a different technique, and that technique involved a chroma key green backdrop, and I had basically a block of wood that I put on a Lazy Susan, and so that allowed me to turn the piece of wood. And then I used my DSLR and I zoomed in, so I was far away from it, and I zoomed in from across the room. And I just want to kind of show the difference. I know I talked about in the video about how there's perspective distortion, and if you can zoom in, it gets rid of a lot of that. So here's the proof. And if you look at these two pictures and you see like this curvature here, obviously when you're modeling, you're going to have to ignore that. Like, this is really a flat bottom, so you wouldn't want to like model it on a curve. But this is what happens when the camera is close to the object and you're just getting the normal perspective from that. Now from here, I think I was it's like a 135 zoom, 135 millimeter zoom, and it's a crop sensor, which I don't want to get into the technical stuff, but that means that it's even closer. So I was zoomed way in, and you can see that when you look across the bottom here, it almost looks flat. So that's the difference that you get, even especially here with this bar on top. You can really read how this bar right there on top is almost 100% straight, and even with the one in back. But then this one here is kind of goofy. You can see how far apart these look with the perspective distortion. So basically, when you're doing this top piece here, you're going to want to follow like this guide to get the actual shape of it. You wouldn't want to follow from the side here. I mean, you'll just know like the distance. Now, I also put this piece in here so you would have the measurements. This is the actual measurements that I took with a ruler. So that'll tell you, you could build, you want to block this out first and block out each piece, the size that it's going to be, and just kind of get this, your general measurements, and then that way it'll be easier to figure out. In the big picture, you'll know you have a guide for yourself. Okay, so we're going to continue on. So we are going to use this one because the reason why I'm using this one is like most people don't have access to a DSLR. Some do, but most don't. And if you don't, and you don't have a good zoom lens, then this may be your only option for getting decent reference pictures of an object. So we're going to continue using this one. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to pull up my my image size, which we talked a little bit about that before, why this is going to be important. And I'm just going to go ahead and just copy this number over. Let's see there. There we go. I'm just going to put it up here so I can look at that while I'm in Maya. And then I'm going to go into Maya. All right, so here we are, and let's turn the grid off for right now. I'm going to go ahead and make a plane. All right, let's go to my channel box, and from here, I've got my width and my height. Now, this number here, I want to put in one of these, most likely the width. So I'm going to just paste that in. Now here's the interesting thing. It doesn't necessarily matter because this is done in centimeters. I can move the decimal point. It doesn't have to be 11, like a huge plane. I can actually move the decimal point. So then I know that this was 2048. So 2048, and then I could just move the decimal point 3 points up here and put that in like that and hit enter. And so the size of the plane that we're getting is like that. And let's just put this to 1. So now we just have one single plane there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the texture on there right away. But before that, let's do one other thing. Let's see here. I just want to get this out of there. Let's go ahead and fix the UVs for this. So Maya does this thing when you create planes and you create them at like a non-square aspect ratio. Maya in the UV editor will try to match that aspect ratio. And I actually don't want it to do that. I want my UVs to be snapped, or to basically fill the whole space. Because what will happen is when I put the texture on here, it's already like a texture that's it's not the normal aspect ratio of a square. It wouldn't be like a 2048 by 2048. This thing's already elongated. So you're basically crunching that into this space. So it'll make more sense once I start doing it. So just follow along. So what I'm going to do here is I can turn my snaps on, my grid snaps, and that works inside of here too. And then if I come here to my UVs, I can just grab the UVs here, hit W on my keyboard, and I want to snap it up to the 1 here. So I'm just going to snap it right to there. And now I can deselect this, just go to, well, we can just click outside of it. And I can actually close this window. I don't need this open right now. Okay, so in order to see the texture on this, we're gonna have to actually hit 6 on our keyboard. So I just hit 6, so that way when I put the material on here, it will show up. The other thing is I probably should name this right away. I'm very specific about naming references. I usually put in ref, like underscore. Since this is going to be cut up, I'll just put this one as front, and you'll see how that works later. So I'm just putting ref underscore front, and then I'm going to put this inside of a layer, and I'm going to name that layer just ref underscore like FR layer. And you can pick a color for references and say like all of them are blue or something like that. So if you deselect it and you have this on, you see your wireframe is that blue color now. So you can know that like all my references are always the same color. All right, so let's go ahead and put the material on this. We're just going to select it. I'm going to right click and drag down to assign new material. And I want to make a Lambert. And now that this is a Lambert, let's find this Lambert in here. Here it is, Lambert 2. And we'll name it M underscore ref underscore lamp. That's fine. The M, of course, is designating that it's a material. Okay, so wasn't supposed to click off that, but I did. And now it's in UV mode somehow. Okay, don't know why I did that. That's okay. Let's go in here and get our color, or basically our diffuse color texture, and that will be in our modeling folder, and it should be in week 7, and this is the one, so I'm going to hit open. And if we've done everything correctly, it should come in basically looking just like it did in Photoshop. So, I can rotate around this and stuff, but it basically is the same aspect ratio and it looks right. Okay, if you are not seeing this looking like this, you probably skipped a step, and I'm guessing it's probably the UV step. So you need to make sure. So you want to see, this is how the picture is actually being crunched into this square space. And that's why you don't want the UVs to be just like this little section down here. You want it to be the whole thing. Okay, so let's close that up. Let's close that up. And wonderful, Maya just put like a filter on this thing. So let's turn that off. I don't know why it did that. So now it's like showing it at a lower resolution. There's probably a way that you can change like what is the default resolution, but I'm not sure at this moment. I know it's in here somewhere, but I haven't found it in the new UV editor. So if it's looking like this, let's see, that's not great. So I guess we will have to eventually find out how to fix that. One thing that, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. One thing that you can do with that is they usually put a filter on it by default, and it might be the filter that's causing this. So that's pre-filter right there. I doubt that that's what's causing it. It used to be on by default, but now it looks like they don't put it on by default. People probably complained. So we'll come back to that because it's not essential for us to fix that right now. But basically, now that we've got this in here, let's rotate it. And so what I'm going to do is grab it on the X, and then I'm just going to hold J, and I'm going to rotate it while I'm holding J. Okay, now it all of a sudden got the right resolution, and it looks like I'm 15 off. So what J does is that if you don't know, you have like a rotation snap right here. It says step. If I turn this to like relative, I can tell it to snap at 15 increments. But if you have it off, the J actually like temporarily activates it, so you can actually snap your rotation like live in the viewport without having to come in here and turn it on. So that's basically what I just did. So for whatever reason, after I rotated it, now the texture is looking right. Not sure what's going on, but that's there's something internal happening. All right, so we've got all these in here, and they look fine. And so let's go ahead and cut them up. So basically what you want to do is you just, in this case, I think I'll just use my cut tool, and I'll hold control, and I'm just going to cut on each one of these lines. So basically, as long as you hold it over this this edge, like the top edge, if you hold over this edge, it'll cut horizontal, but you want the vertical cut. So you hold over this edge, cut it in there. If you need to get in closer, that's not a problem. Just get in closer. And this is why I put those little lines in there, even though it's not, essential. I just thought it would look neater, and, some people are just too particular like myself. So anyway, all right, let's go ahead and see what we got here. So we've got all these different pieces, and we could go ahead and let me go to my modeling kit. So there's detach and there's extract. Any of these could work, You can go detach, and actually I think I could probably grab all of these and just hit detach, and it'll do them all at once. So let's see. Oh no, maybe just one at a time. Huh. Okay, let's hit that one. Worked correctly. So apparently you have to grab them one at a time. I thought they might work all at once. So I'm just hitting G on my keyboard now just to repeat the last tool. So now they should all be detached. Once they're all detached, they're basically all like living in their own little island. And then you can come up to mesh, and just go ahead and hit separate. And what that did is it just separated each one of these into their own piece. Okay, so now I'll grab all of these, I'll delete the history, and then if you want, you could actually, I would center pivot on all of these. So center pivot, so if you select them, you get the pivot right in the middle, like so. And the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set up the correct directions for these things. So this being the front, I'm going to want the front going in the positive Z. So you can see the blue arrow pointing here. That's the positive Z. It also relates to this little widget right here. So this is your world directions. So if you see the positive Z pointing in that direction, then you're right. And then what I would want to do is just center this onto the grid. So I can just turn the grid on, and I'm going to go ahead and just hold X on my keyboard so my grid snap is on, and then just snap that right to the middle. And then so for this piece, I'm going to go ahead and just turn on my rotation, hold J on my keyboard again so I can get my increment snaps, and then just snap it to -90. And then again, just hold J on the keyboard, or sorry, go to your move tool and hold X on the keyboard, and then just snap that to the center. Now, once we've snapped this one to the center, I will have to do this. I'm going to move this over just a little bit more. Otherwise, we're going to get what's called Z fighting, which is what you're seeing right here. You see how these like different planes are trying to pop through and fight for the front. Maya's trying to, it doesn't know what to do because they're sharing the same space. So they call it Z fighting. Z is in zebra. All right, so let's go ahead and do this one, and we'll just do the same thing. So rotation, hold J on my keyboard, rotate it like so, and then I'll just go ahead and use W and snap it to the center, and then I'll just move it. In this one, you don't actually have to move back because it shouldn't Z fight with the one that I moved off because they're not sharing the same space, so you can just leave it there in the center. Okay, the back one, so of course it's going to be the same thing, hold J. Now, actually, technically, you can see both sides of these. If you go into your attribute editor, you can turn on, let's see, where is it? Should be under I don't know why I'm not seeing it. Oh, I'm under the shader. Duh. That's why I can't see it. Okay, so we're looking at object display. No, sorry. Render stats. Just turn on, well, double-sided is on. And object display. I probably have like backface call set in something. And that's, normally you can actually see both sides of these, but in this case it's not showing it. Okay, so how to fix that? Well, realistically, what I do want it facing the right direction. So I'm going to hold J and just turn it around like so. And then, snap it to the center again like that. And then I'm just going to move it a little bit off so they're not Z-fighting. Okay, you can kind of see how these are starting to come together here, pretty close. Obviously the front looks a little weird because it's got the horn-shaped light sticking out. This top one, we're going to have to rotate. Let's go ahead and just hold J. Oops, I just hit the wrong button. J, and let's rotate it around like so. And then let's hold that again, and we'll rotate it that way. Okay, and then we'll move it over here. And then this one you could probably just leave where it's at. Okay, and I'll go ahead and actually I'll just move it up a little bit because we'll just use the bottom one like this. J. There you go. And then move this, holding X to the center, and then there we go. So now we have our reference planes close to set up. They're not perfect yet, but they are pretty close. Because of the perspective distortion, it's not going to be a perfect scenario here. Just warning you up front. For instance, this piece right here, this front piece, should probably be about right there. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at this right here, how this meets up. So those are two different pictures, but that gets them closer to lining up. All right, and the back, the side looks pretty good, and the back looks pretty good. Okay, those turned out pretty decent without any problems. This top one might be completely off. So what I would want to do is go to a side view and see if I can line the top up properly, like so. Now we may not even, some of these you may not need out too much, and you may hide them a lot, not even use them that much, but you have them just in case you need the reference from that location. Actually, this top one too, I mean, what you could do is you can kind of, if you wanted to, you can move it down here if that makes it easier. We will actually move these up eventually so they're on the grid. So that's how I like to work. I like to just build right off the top of the grid. You could take this here, the bottom part, and the bottom's not as important either, so that's another one that I might be able to move down. But let's line it up first. Let's go ahead and just line it up like that. And we're not worried about these being perfect because we're really not going to use them that much. But I'm just going to move it down like that. So that looks pretty good. Okay, so you can see how we kind of got all of these things at different directions. We can look at them. You can go to the top and look at that. You can go to the bottom and see that that's how it looks. So that'll work. That's fine. All right, so now the question is, next, do you want to have, you could take these and like combine them all, move them, have them one piece, hide them and bring them back. That may be easier, or you may think like, well, sometimes I need one side out and then I don't want the other side out, and you could go ahead and put all these on different layers. So originally I was thinking of putting them all in different layers, but now that I'm looking at the setup, I'm thinking that it might be okay if I just go ahead and combine them all. So that's what I'm actually going to do. I think in the long run, I'm going to be a lot happier. So I'm just going to combine these again. So mesh, combine, and there we go. And then let's just delete the history off that. And I'm going to center pivot, which is probably not going to help me exactly with what I want. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit D on my keyboard, and then I'm going to slide the pivot down a little bit like so, and kind of move this towards the center here. Let's go to a side view. So let's go to like right view, hit F on the keyboard, and let's just move this thing right there, right in the middle. So that's pretty nicely aligned. Hit D again to turn that off. And now I'm just going to hold X on my keyboard to snap the grid. Keep saying V. And I'm actually going to move it down just a little bit because realistically, what I'm looking for is I have to take into account this perspective distortion. So really the center is actually going from this front point to this front point back here. So that the center of the mesh, with the perspective distortion. So I'm kind of considering it from here to here. So I'm going to move that. So I'm just kind of looking at the front here and then trying to line it up with this grid line right here. So let's go like this. You can see it better. So you can see the grid line comes through here, and I want that to hit the front, and I want this to come out the back. So I'm just going to kind of adjust that a little bit. All right, that'll work. And let's take a look at it. So there we go. And since I decided to change the model from being all separate layers and just making one, I'm going to go ahead and just change this to ref layer. Get rid of that. And there we go. So now the references are set up, and the next step will be to go ahead and just block this thing out with the right proper sizes. All right, so that will be next.